Meet Bubbles the baby elephant. Today I'm going to show you, step by step, how you can sculpt your own bubbles. Summer's nearly upon us, and summer's carnival season. This is the first video in my carnival series, which I'll be working on over the next week or so. Welcome to Up All Night DIY. I'm Monica. Thanks for joining me. The first thing that we're going to need to make bubbles is some sort of clay. I'm going to use Daz clay. This is only my second time using this, but any clay you prefer would work. We're also going to need a 1.9 inch and a 2.3 inch styrofoam ball. I got mine at the Dollar Tree. We're going to tap flat spots, one on each of the foam balls. This will both help keep them from rolling away, and it'll make it easier to attach them to one another. So I'm just going to tap them on the table, just like this. Really just press down. Make a little flat spot. Very easy. I also grabbed a pack of these wee ice cream cups from the Dollar Tree. We're going to use this to make his stand. And I cut cardboard circles to fit the bottom of the cup. We're going to need some other products, but we'll get into that later. We have a lot to do, so let's get into it. I'm going to cut enough clay here to be able to cover my large foam ball. I really just guesstimated and whacked a chunk off. I'll need it to condition it just like I do with Model Magic clay. And this is really to make it more pliable and to distribute any of the moisture in the clay evenly. This will prevent it from cracking. Well, it should do anyway. I'm going to roll the clay out nice and flat using my acrylic brayer. We want to do our best to keep it the same thickness because that will help with the drying time, and again, it'll help to prevent any cracking. I'll lay my clay over the foam ball, covering it, and I'm going to press it to make sure that it's well adhered. And of course, I'm going to roll it on the table. That helps to smooth it, but also to make sure that the clay is sticking to the foam. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to cut away any excess, but we'll save that, and we're going to fill in any gaps with that excess clay. Now, I'm not expecting this clay to be super smooth. That's okay by me, since an elephant has a rough, wrinkly hide, so I don't mind a little texture. I'm just following the same process I would if I was using Model Magic. Basically, it's the same thing, pretty much. One of the additional supplies that we're going to need is toothpicks. I'm going to take 2 toothpicks and cut them in half so that I have 4 shorter toothpicks. I'm going to push those toothpicks up into the flat spot on the bottom of our clay-covered foam ball. These will anchor his legs to his body. To make his legs, I've grabbed another handful of clay, which I've already pretty much conditioned, and I'm going to roll it into a thick log. I'm going to slightly narrow one end of it because I want his feet to be smaller than the rest of his legs. I think that's really cute and very cartoon-esque. These are a little too long, so I'm going to cut a wee bit off, make them just a tad shorter. I'm going to scruff up the bottom of his body with this wire tool, just making little scratches in the clay. And I'm going to do that on the clay for his legs as well. This should help the clay adhere to itself. I'll slide the log of clay over top of the toothpicks. And we're going to roll a thin log of clay, which we're going to use to fill the gap between his legs and his body. It just needs to be long enough to fit around that little space. I'll wrap the log around the gap using my fingers to press it in there. The clay's starting to get a little dry, so I'm going to spritz it with some water, and I'm going to use a damp paintbrush also to moisten it. Using my clay tool, I'm going to mesh the new clay with the clay of the legs and the body. I'm just basically pushing it on there and smoothing it as I go. So, you know, it's almost like spreading butter, really. You can use the handle of a paintbrush to do this. You can roll over it. You've seen me do that with Model Magic. It's basically the same thing. When we're done, we want it to look like it's all one piece. If you have to dampen the clay again, do that. Use your fingers to smooth it out. Whatever you need to do. but I will say that it is pretty easy. Just don't overthink it. Using the handle of my clay tool, I'm going to make indentations to create his legs. I'll do my best to make them as even as possible. So I'm just, you can see, going around the sides and then across the bottom, trying to keep it all lined up. I think that looks pretty good. There are a couple sharpish edges, so I'm just going to use my clay tool handle to round over the sharp edges. Basically just rolling over them, smoothing them out. And once I'm happy with that, I'm going to set his body aside and we'll work on his head. We'll roll out more clay, enough to cover the small foam ball. We're going to cover this the exact same way that we did the larger ball, filling in any gaps that we may have with any of the excess clay that we may have cut off. You feel me? Same exact thing. And just like before, we're going to roll it around on a table to get it as smooth as we can. I push a toothpick into the flat spot that we made on our small ball, and we're going to push that small ball onto his body. We'll fill the gap with another thin log of clay and incorporate it, same as we did with the legs, so that it all looks like it's one solid piece. You can see we're pushing it into the gap with our fingers, and then we'll get our tool and just smooth it out, connecting the head with the body. And remember to spritz it with water if it seems like it's a little dry. You want the clay to be nice and smooth and easy to manipulate. Alright, so Bubbles is going to need a cute wee trunk, which means we'll roll another log of clay, and we're going to slightly narrow one end. We'll flatten the other end, the wider end, like this, kind of like a golf tee. I find that when I'm working with clay, the easiest thing to do for me is to break it down into simple shapes. It's always good to have a drawing or a reference picture too. That certainly helps. We're using another toothpick to anchor his trunk. I'm just going to push that in right where I want his trunk to go. I'm only leaving a wee bit sticking out. And we'll slide the trunk on right on top of it. And I think I'm going to give it a wee bit of an upturn, just slightly. And once again, we are going to smooth it and incorporate it, just like we did before. Dampen it with a little bit of water if you need to, and keep smoothing until you're happy with it. Take your time, enjoy the process, don't get frustrated. It's not that big of a deal. It's more about enjoying, and just like with anything else, the more you do it, the better you get. I think that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Let's make his ears. I flatten more clay, and I'm going to use a round cookie cutter to cut 2 circles. I scruff up the area where his ears will go with my wire tool. You could use a toothpick for this too. I'm just going to press the ears on and incorporate them same as before, but only at the bottom because I want his ears to be sticking up. So I'm just going to smooth them right there along the bottom of the ear. And one of the other things that's important with the ears is you want to make sure that they're even and level with each other. I'm just smoothing out the bottom of his ear. So again, that it looks like it's all connected to his head. There we go. Now he can hear everything we're saying. I've rolled a wee cone shape to make his head. I'll cut that to size, and I'm going to scruff the bottom of it and the area of his head where the hat will sit. We'll place his hat, and we're going to incorporate it. Now here, obviously the hat is not, part of him, but I do want to make sure that the clay at the bottom of the hat is really well incorporated with the clay on his head. We don't want that hat shifting around. You could use a toothpick to hold it in place, but I didn't really think it was necessary, and it worked out fine. I've actually been making a second guy, his brother Snuffles, alongside of this one. You'll see both in the final reveal, but I've been doing the exact same thing to the other guy that I'm doing to Bubbles. We're going to let him dry overnight. Both elephants are dry and ready for paint. Bubbles will get 2 applications of Ceramcoat Drizzle Grey, Nothing too fancy about this, just painting them in. I won't paint the hat though, we'll leave that as is. So I've always kind of had a wee bit of a fascination with both the circus and with carnivals. Really more the aesthetics, although I did love a carnival when I was a kid and the boardwalk rides and games and all that, you know? Anyway, I thought this would be perfect for the summer to do a carnival theme. So once I get all my pieces completed in the series, I'll be able to decorate my living room so that, you know, it reminds me of summer as a kid. If you've been watching me for a while, you've probably seen that I've made a couple of Halloween pieces that are circus themed. Yeah, I just dig that vibe. And I love elephants, so I thought this is the perfect way to kick this off. You feel me? So I drew a wee saddle on a piece of paper, and I'm just going to trace it onto this guy, and we're going to paint it in with Ceramcoat Watermelon, 2 coats. I guess it's a saddle. Maybe it's just a decorative throw. You tell me. So let's get this painted in real quick like. His hat is going to get 2 coats of Ceramcoat Ocean Reef. I like this blue. I'm not a real big red, white, and blue kind of gal. I don't really decorate a whole lot with it. Since we're doing the carnival theme, I thought this would fit in perfectly. And next weekend, we're doing the Cancellated Creations How Do You Red, White, and Blue. So I figured this would work with everything else I'm going to make for that. You know what I'm saying? Of course, you could use any colors at all that float your boat, blow your hair back, whatever you like. That's what you do. We are going to dry brush inside of his ears and also his cheeks with Ceramcoat Moonlight Rose. This is a really pretty, yeah, I guess it's rose. It's like a soft red or something. I actually found it under a cabinet in my house. I don't know where it came from. I don't know if somebody sent it to me. I don't remember buying it, but who knows? I may have picked it up for, you know, kicks and giggles. Right, so as always, when I'm dry brushing, I always start out light and just build upon the depth of color. Yeah, let's give him some rosy cheeks. Cute, cute. We're going to add some shading by dry brushing him all over with Ceramcoat Rain Gray. Well, all the gray parts of him anyway. So it's the same deal. I start out light and just darken the color wherever I feel it needs it. You know, we definitely want to shade around his trunk and of course his ears. And try to get in the grooves in his legs. I think they're the most important parts. Let's bring in some of that ocean reef by outlining his saddle. Doing my best to keep the lines as straight as possible. We're going to add his features first with Rain Gray, so his eyes, and of course a happy wee mouth. I totally forgot to give him a tail, so we're just going to paint one on. Just a wee V shape on his bum. That'll suffice. While we wait for his features to dry, we'll embellish his saddle with these wee vinyl stickers I made. Wee white circles with a blue quasar, because you know, that's how I roll. We're going to pop them on right at the end here. Let's add an ocean reef outline to the circle as well. Give it a more finished appearance. Now I'm going to go over his features with Hippo Grey to give them more definition. I want them to stand out more. The Rain Gray original features are acting more like a shadow. You know what I'm saying? Now we're going to dip dot his eyes on with Hippo Toe. With my detail brush and some white paint, I'm going to paint in a starburst on the front and back center of his hat. So the starburst is just one long line with an X through it. Real simple. We're going to dip dot highlights for his eyes and his cheeks. Just wee dots. How about some red and white dots around the bottom of his hat? Kind of like pom-poms. I think this is cute. I was originally going to do polka dots on his hat, but I like this better. We need to seal him with some DecoArt multi-purpose sealer, so I'm just going to pounce that on with a cosmetic sponge. You know Mod Podge works for this too. Final embellishment for bubbles is this festooning that I made from crepe paper streamers. I'll link my videos that show you how to make it. You'll find those in the description box with the supply list. I'm going to use my fabric glue to affix it around his neck. Now, I've mentioned it before, you don't really want to use hot glue here, at least not hot glue on its own, because hot glue does not work on non-porous surfaces, but fabric glue works on everything. So once I get it into place, I'll cut off any excess. Perfect. Now we can set him aside and work on his stand. Remember the ice cream cup I mentioned in the beginning? Well, that's going to be his stand. And I painted it with a couple of coats of white chalk paint to cover that waxy finish. Acrylic paint would be more likely to scratch off, that's why I used the chalk paint as the base. I traced on 4 equal triangles around the cup, and we will paint these with watermelon. So I'm just going to outline them first, and then we'll fill them in. It took 3 coats to get them fully covered. I also painted the cardboard circles that I showed you earlier. I painted those with watermelon as well. The way I worked out how to get a perfect triangle that was going to fit 4 times around the cup perfectly is I measured the widest part of the bottom of the cup, which was 11 inches. I divided that by 4, so 2 3/4 inches, and I measured the height, and then I just made sure that the base of the triangle was 2 3/4 inches, and that the height, I think it was 2.5 inches, something like that, but that's how you do it. So we'll finish these up real quick. I traced slightly smaller circles onto some white vinyl, and I'm going to place those in the center of the red cardboard. I just traced this on by hand and then cut them out with scissors, but if you have a Cricut or a Silhouette, you could do it that way too. Once I get these placed, we're going to add some blue quasars to the center. Of course we are. And we're also going to add some quasars to the red triangles. Well, you'll see. We're going to do 1 big blue quasar right in the center. And then we'll have 4 small satellite ones going around the big one. Now we'll pop some stars onto the triangles. I'm going to add a white drop shadow to the left of the quasars on his stand. I think that'll be cute. And we're going to outline the triangles with some ocean reef. Make it look a little more polished, a little more finished. Since we have the ocean reef on the go, we're going to do a drop shadow on the stars on the cardboard. You know what I'm saying. Right. I'll affix the cardboard circles to the cup with hot glue, making sure that it is centered. To embellish, I'll add this red, white, and blue braiding around both the top and the bottom of the stand. We want to hide the edge of the cardboard at the top, and we want to hide the lip at the bottom. We don't want to see that. Let's look at some pretty braiding instead. Pipe cleaners would work for this too, or whatever kind of trim you got going on. And finally, we'll add bubbles to the top of the stand using both fabric glue and a wee bit of hot glue for that quick grab. And Bubbles, the baby carnival elephant, is done. Aw, how cute is he? Looking all sweet up there on his stand. What a cutie. And this is his twin brother, Snuffles. They love working in tandem at the carnival. It's their favorite thing. So not only did I forget to give him a tail, but I had also wanted to have him holding a pennant in his trunk, and I totally forgot, which is a bummer because that would have been super cute. But I think both Bubbles and Snuffles are pretty cute as it is. What do you think? As I mentioned early on, this is just the first of several carnival-themed projects that I'll be doing in the upcoming weeks. Including next week, I'll be hosting the Can't Sleep Creations, How Do You Do Red, White, and Blue, along with Dawn of Shabby Meets Bling and Jody of Jody at Southern Seasons. You're definitely going to want to tune in for that. Well, that's it for today. I hope you liked today's projects, me, Bubbles, and Snuffles. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. It really does help us out. Stay creative, my friends. Thanks for hanging with me. See you next time. Up all night with Monica.